everybody, and welcome to the program. It's Monday, 18 minutes. What does that mean to you, 18 minutes? Is that like a blink of the eye, turn around, you'll miss it? Or is it possibly the most critical window in the disappearance of a young man down in Nashville? Riley Strain was seen on camera. He was kicked out of a bar, and 18 minutes later, he was never seen again. He veritably vanished in 18 minutes. But tonight, we have a lot of new evidence. For starters, brand new body cam. That is him on a policeman's body cam who's somewhere else investigating something else, just happens to catch Riley, a glimpse of Riley, and spoke with him. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this moment and why it is critical in the investigation as we search for Riley Strain. And then also his bank card turned up this weekend. It was on a riverbank, which is not good news, but TikTokers found it, not the police. Also not good news. I'm going to talk about the significance of all of that with his family. They're joining me live tonight. I'm going to ask them if they know some things that maybe we don't know and shouldn't know, and if there's any new update as well. So make sure you stay tuned. And then inside the mind of a serial killer, I am always fascinated by what makes serial killers tick. And I might have just hit the mother lode. I don't know. It's a little tricky. But I got a letter from Dennis Rader, BTK, the bind, torture, kill serial killer. He wrote me a letter, and it is in code, but some of it makes a lot of sense. And what doesn't make sense, I've got the code breaker, because he is regularly in correspondence with a PhD in this stuff. She's going to be on tonight to decode much of it. I can tell you this, though, in all that scratch and in the margins right there, he did tell me this. He plans to retire. Do what now? You're locked away for life in a state penitentiary, but you are retiring. I will explain what I think he means by that. That's coming up in just a moment as well. And then the Delphi murders, years and years later, still yet to be resolved. But we are inching closer to a trial for Richard Allen, the only person who's been charged in this crime. Today, he walked into a courtroom in Indiana, and it was important. You know when they say looks don't matter? Looks matter a lot in this case, like a lot. That's him when they arrested him, kind of a heavy-set fella with a long beard, and that is him just a few months later. They hardly look like the same guy. And the reason I say that is not because, he's lost some weight in prison. It might actually be a defense strategy. There is a whole reason why getting skinny and ill looking like that on the right might actually be a benefit to Richard Allen in fighting the fact that police say he confessed while he was in jail. And also there's some brand new charges that he's facing, like a good news, bad news thing. I'll explain everything that happened in court today and why it really matters if we're going to get justice for those two little girls who were killed on that bridge, or at least near that bridge the day they went hiking. Let's start here, though. They say every detail is important to investigators, no matter how small. So you can imagine how big a deal it was to find Riley Strain's bank card over the weekend, 10 days after he disappeared. It was found on the banks of the Cumberland River in Nashville, very close to the last place that his cell phone pinged the night he disappeared. I have a lot more details on that in just a moment, but we also have stunning new video of Riley himself in the last moments just before he vanished. It is police body cam video. A police officer actually captured Riley walking by and the last known sighting of him. The Nashville police made it public after showing this to Riley's parents in a private briefing yesterday. Riley's mother, father, and stepfather are going to join me live in just a moment, but first more on the findings and what they mean. The bank card turned up yesterday on the riverbank, spotted by two TikTokers named Anna Clendenning and Brandy Bainan. The women had volunteered to help search for Riley and were sifting through a bunch of discarded belongings on the riverbank when they discovered Riley's card. They say it was either, quote, dumb luck or, quote, divine intervention. But there's no word yet on whether that card had been used since the last time Riley used it. As for the new body cam video of Riley, it was captured by a police officer while he was investigating an unrelated car break-in near the riverbank. The officer and Riley actually exchanged a few words, too, as Riley walked by him. So I want you to see it sort of from start to finish, and you can listen carefully to hear what he said. Take a look.
How you doing, sir? I'm good. How are you? Good.
How are you? Good. Might not seem like much, but there is a lot to learn from that exchange. First, Riley seems a lot more steady on his feet than he did on the surveillance videos that recorded him just moments beforehand, stumbling. He also doesn't sound intoxicated in that very split second of audio. That's what I can say, in the split second of audio. We also have a location where that body cam was captured. Riley was walking at Gay Street, just south of the Woodland Street Bridge. That's important. Don't have a timestamp on that video, but the police say they know it happened right around 9:50 p.m. Friday, March 8th. Just minutes before Riley's cell phone pinged a tower for the final time. And that brings me to the timeline, how quickly Riley disappeared. According to police, just 18 minutes. Start at 9:40 p.m. He's asked to leave a downtown bar where he's been drinking with his fraternity brothers from the University of Missouri. The bar says he violated their, quote, conduct standards, but bar also says he was only served one alcoholic drink and 2 waters. In a phone call, he tells his friends he's walking back to their hotel, but he gets turned around and he ends up walking in the opposite direction from the hotel. At 9:45 p.m., that's 5 minutes after he left the bar, he is caught on a store security camera stumbling down the sidewalk on Church Street. At one point, he falls. Looks like he falls into a pole, actually, but he does get up from that, and he keeps walking. 2 minutes later, 9:47 p.m., a surveillance camera spots Riley crossing First Avenue to Gay Street. That's alongside the river. He seems very, very drunk, and at one point, he turns back as if he's lost. A short time later, at 9:50 p.m., he is caught on the officer's body cam, not far from where the TikTokers would find his bank card 9 days later. This area is covered in heavy brush, and there's a lot of garbage in that area. It's close to a homeless encampment, and that's important because of something else that we learned on this show last week. A volunteer named Sabrina Martin, who regularly helps to feed the homeless, she remembers seeing a homeless man wearing a distinctive shirt just like the one that Riley was wearing when he disappears. She witnessed this 2 days after Riley vanished. She didn't even know about the Riley story. But she says the man had a hoodie and other clothes that were very, very dirty, the homeless man. She's serving him water, but she notices that the shirt underneath his dirty hoodie is very clean, and she says it stood out because he had a bike and he didn't take any food, just the water, and that those things are unusual. Sabrina Martin is her name. She says she tried to report all of this to the police. She even says, I recognize the shirt, the pattern, the block white and black with the black pocket, the whole bit, like details. She was sent to voicemail when she called the police. She left 2 messages, and she even went another step further. She called Crime Stoppers. But as of today, investigators had not called her back. Just let that sink in for a minute. A tip like that from Sabrina Martin, who works with the homeless, recognized that homeless man wearing what she said she recognized as Riley's shirt, clean underneath his dirty hoodie. Didn't take any food. Just took the water, rode a bike, said that was the shirt right there. Black on one side, white on one side with a black pocket. She recognized it. At the time, again, she didn't know about Riley's story, but she saw Riley's story later and said, I recognize that shirt. I saw that shirt. I want to bring in NewsNation's national correspondent, Caitlin Becker. Caitlin, just to get some more reporting in here, police divers actually got to work for the first time, what is it, Saturday? Do we have any reports back on the work they did, the kind of searching they did?
We really don't, Ashleigh. It does seem like that river would be the most logical place to start, so I'm not surprised that on Saturday they were looking for him there. I mean, based on that last cell phone ping alone, it does kind of stand to reason that maybe that would be where they were looking. These are images that you're seeing right now that the police released that said that they were searching this river and this embankment. As we know now, the embankment is where that bank card was found by those TikTokers. But this is being treated as a missing persons case and not a crime or a potential crime scene. So I'm not surprised that there were other people involved trying to look for clues. What I think is the most interesting sort of turn in all of this, Ashleigh, is this recent video that you were just playing at the top of this segment that showed a very different version of Riley Strain that we saw acknowledging that police officer than we saw in the surveillance videos that were taken just moments before. You know, there's a part of me that remembers being drunker than I should have been in front of someone who is a member of authority, and you kind of snap to, and you can kind of pull it together in that moment. But what I think is interesting is if he was lost, if he was turned around, there was an officer there that could have helped him, and he didn't seem in distress, and he didn't reach out to say, hey, do you know where I'm going, or anything like that. He just kind of kept on walking toward the direction of this river.
It's the first thing I thought of. Teenagers instantly seeing authority, try to snap to, sober up fast, don't want to get arrested. And so I could see that in this split second is all we get. Who knows what happened before that split second, after that split second. But I just want to drill down on the store owner who saw Riley that night. We interviewed him on Friday. Police had not come to question him at that time. And Melissa Martin, who works with the homeless, who spotted that shirt, called the police, was sent to voicemail, called back, called Crime Stoppers. She still hasn't been questioned either as of today, and yet they're so certain no foul play. How can they possibly know that?
Actually, honestly, it's very baffling that the police have said not once, not twice, but they've doubled and tripled down on the fact that they are sure that at this point they do not suspect any sort of foul play. Even if you don't suspect any foul play, we still want to find this individual. So you would think that they would reach back out to those people. I don't know if maybe this means there are a lot of tips coming in from people who say they saw Riley that night and they're running them down, giving the police the benefit of the doubt. But Ashleigh, I know how you and I have covered these stories multiple times. The police are rarely this open with how the investigation is going. So these things are kind of not equal to me.
Yeah, it's so baffling. Caitlin, stay on it and jump back in during the show, like break in if you get any updates as well. Because I know this sometimes can change by the minute. In the meantime, yesterday the Nashville police held a special briefing for Riley's family. They were able to look over evidence and ask the police officers questions. Riley's parents join me live now. His mom and stepfather, Michelle and Chris Whited, and his father, Ryan Gilbert. Thank you to all three of you for taking the time tonight to speak with me. And may I just say, I am so sorry for what you are all going through. I can't imagine the stress that you're under and how traumatizing this must be. So let's get right to it. Let's help to drill down what we know and get the public working hard. So, Michelle, you met with the police yesterday. Were they able to share anything with you that was at least satisfying, anything that you're able to share with us or not able to share with us?
No, they just let us know where they are in the investigation and the videos that everybody has seen.
So what the media knows and what the public knows is the same as what you know, right?
Just a little bit. They, just so you know, we requested the meeting Friday afternoon late that we get to see the video footage. We had not seen anything or really heard from them too much throughout the previous week, so we were getting frustrated. We wanted to see what they had. So it's not like this was one of those deals. It came up after we called them to tell them that the TikTokers had found the debit card because they didn't know that it had been found. Supposedly, they didn't know that the call had came in. We arrived before the police.
So I'll tell you what, I understand the sensitivity that you all are under. You do not want to criticize the police because right now they are your lifeline to continuing this investigation, to finding Riley. I, on the other hand, I can. And I am steaming mad that I interviewed a woman who works with the homeless who says she could have sworn she saw that shirt on a homeless man who was acting in an unusual way, had an unusual behavior, and that he had a bike, which is not normal, didn't ask for food, which is not normal, and that the shirt was perfectly clean underneath his dirty hoodie. And she has not been questioned, even as of today when we checked back with her. So, Chris, I'll just ask you if you were able to talk to the police about this, if they mentioned anything about it, if they've discounted it in any way, and why.
They have not mentioned that to us at all. We are aware of that. We've heard the same comment. We've also heard multiple people that have tried to call Crime Stoppers and leave tips and been told they don't know anything about a Riley Strain case. So lots of confusion. We're struggling. We're 10 days in, It's
yeah.
disheartening.
I can imagine. And I'll tell you what, like I said, I can criticize the police. I agree that you guys just have to keep your heads up and work with them. But Ryan, I will also say this, to have TikTokers who volunteered to look for Riley, find that bank card in what looked like a homeless mess of discarded clothing and junk on the riverbed, made me really angry, because I feel like it was right in the vicinity where Riley's phone pinged, and that there should have been a grid search done. This was found days and days after perhaps it should have been. Ryan, are they saying anything about that card and about the fact that it was TikTokers, not the police, that found it?
No, there hadn't necessarily been anything said about that. One would assume that since it was found in the vicinity of his last known whereabouts, that should have been canvassed pretty good. I think it just shines light on the B- job that the police force may be doing and following through and being detailed on this case. I know they're overwhelmed, but it was at the location,
It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening that a member of the public who just wanted to help was able to find a critical piece of evidence that had the police done a grid search in that exact same area, might very well have seen it too. For instance, they're a lot more trained at searching than, say, a TikToker. But Michelle, it came to our attention today that Riley had been on the phone with, I think, either a girlfriend or somebody he had maybe started seeing. I'm not sure. Maybe you can characterize the relationship. And I think she asked him that night, "Are you having fun?" And the only text that she got back said something like, "Good lops," LOPS. And she couldn't understand what that meant. Can you shed some light on that communication, when it happened, what the circumstances were, and what happened afterwards?
I'm not able to. I don't know the communication that happened between him and her. I'm not sure which. He's got several friends that are female, male. I mean, I don't know who that individual was that he talked to at that time.
Well, and it would sort of fall into, it would be congruous with the state that he seemed to be in the videos where he was stumbling and struggling. If he was unable to text something that made sense, like "good lops," it would make sense that maybe that police video was just a momentary snap to it, but that his condition really was extraordinarily inebriated. I do want to ask this. Chris, do you know if the police know or don't know whether Riley ever got across that bridge?
They do not know. Literally, the last place they have him is right before, I believe, the James Robertson Bridge. There's no cameras. We're talking he's 100 yards, 110 yards, maybe, away from where the cop was, and, disappears. We don't know. That's the part that bothers us, is we don't know. We didn't know anymore. We didn't have any new leads or anything. Sunday, when the debit card was found, that's the first new bit of information that we'd had since Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And we've been getting a lot of tips and leads coming directly to us because people are not able to get through, are not saying they're able to get through, or they're finally getting through and then nobody's following up with them. So, we're trying to be as patient as possible, but time is of the essence as of right now. There's things that should be happening, questions that should be answered, people that should be talked to, I'm just at a loss. I don't know, when I hopped in the truck with my wife and we were on our way down here, we never expected this would still be going on. We expected that we would have had him found within the first 24 hours of being here and on our way home. So, a lot of sleepless nights. We're running on adrenaline. We're wore out. We're getting frustrated. We're just, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, I can tell you this. In your next communication with the Nashville police, if you get an answer as to why Melissa Martin has not been questioned yet, who works with the homeless and recognized a homeless man that she had seen many times wearing a shirt that looked exactly like that was lily white and clean under his filthy other clothing, his hoodie. If they can answer you as to why they haven't interviewed her yet, please come back on the show and let us know. But we will continue the story. We'll continue asking these questions, and we will have you back. And I am sending you all of our prayers and our love. Michelle Whited, Chris Whited, and Ryan Gilbert, thank you for being on. And here, folks, for you out there, take a good look at Riley. He's 6'7" and around 160 pounds. He stands out. So anyone with information about Riley's disappearance, please contact the Metro Nashville Police Department. The number 615-862-8600. Again, 615-862-8600. I'll go one further here. If they throw you into voicemail, okay? If they don't bother taking your report and they throw you into voicemail like they did Melissa Martin, call Crime Stoppers and then call me. Call me. Because we will take your report. And then we will do our damnedest to ask the police why they're not. Coming up, it is a strange notion. They torture, they murder, sometimes they get caught. But are we ever really able to get inside the mind of a serial killer? I, for one, am dying to know what makes them tick, and I think I may have just struck gold. Dennis Rader, the notorious BTK serial killer, has just sent me a letter from his prison cell, and the foremost expert on serial killers is about to decode it next. Do you ever get a letter from Caveland? I mean, I've heard of Birdland and Chicagoland and Fantasyland, and just a few days ago, I learned where Caveland is. It's at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. More specifically, it is Dennis Rader's prison cell. Caveland, where Dennis Rader hangs his hat or his towel or his jumpsuit or whatever you hang in your cell. That's what he calls his cell, and he wrote me a letter from there specifically referencing it. He is, of course, the infamous serial killer known as BTK, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, which is what he did to his victims. And he is literally rotting in Caveland for the rest of his life for doing that to at least 10 people, murdering them in the most gruesome way. Correspondence seems to have helped him pass the time, but much of the handwritten letter that he sent to me is really hard to make out. Here is a little bit of what we've been able to decipher, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little surprised because he wrote, "I'm aware of you." Plus, at one time, watched NewsNation in between CNN and Fox. Always enjoyed the program. To bring you up to speed on me, he says, on 12/31/2025, we'll call it quits. BTK, etc. Plus retire. We'll only correspond with roughly 15% of who I correspond with today. Age soon 79 plus, as you well know. I'm famous around the world. I live alone at cell B1-140 here at EDCF. That's the El Dorado Correctional Facility. 18 plus years. Was arrested 2/25/2005, 19 years ago. I live in segregation, sort of called whole. We as inmates have a lot of restrictions, yet I have TV, phone, books, magazines, etc. Play chess by mail or phone. So Dennis Rader plans on retiring. You heard it here first. Retiring. I also want to read you how he groups or labels people with whom he corresponds. It's kind of interesting. He writes, and this is very tricky to understand, so you're going to have to bear with me. quote, to break my correspondence down into downward arrow, A, club, that's 8 to 10 member, dash funds. B, core, bread and butter, funds people. C, past correspondence, but not quite core. Weeding them out in 2024. I'll weed out core plus some club come 2025. D, new wannabe correspondence. 60 to 70% of letters that come in. F, dead on arrival people. M, for media like you, plus V for vendor, and cross for church. He goes on to say that the best way to correspond with him is to put funds into an account so that he can text. And here's where I bring in Catherine Ramsland. As you know, she is a forensic psychologist and author of several books, including Confessions of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. Dr. Ramsland corresponds regularly with Dennis Rader. So, Catherine, what's your take on the letter? It's so cryptic to me, but I feel like you understand it better.
Well, he likes to give instructions. That's one thing. And he's telling you how it's best to talk with him, communicate with him. He's willing to talk by phone, but you have to set up your phone number in the way the protocol demands from IC Solutions. He's trying to convey to you what his daily life is like and how he keeps busy and what's available to him. So, and to let you know that he's aware of you and he's watched the show. He talks about his favorite puzzle book. He talks about the people that he most often corresponds with, the ones he counts on. But yeah, the retirement thing is about, he's just tired. He has a hard time writing. He understands his writing has deteriorated, as you saw, and is hard for people to read. So he's cutting back on how many people he's writing letters to. But still, he'll text with people, and he will call people if they put money on his funds.
And when you say money on his funds, not for his enjoyment or his commissary, it's money to be able to have the communication, correct?
Yeah, like I have a phone fund, and that's the only thing it's for is for him to call me.
Okay. So I got a couple of questions, still more on the retirement. Is that literally what he's saying? I'm going to retire. I'm going to cut people out of my circles and never engage again? Or is he threatening me as if to say, if you don't put money on and start engaging with me, you're out?
Well, it's no threat. It's just the way it is. That's the way that you have to communicate through the prison system. And not threatening you at all. In fact, I just talked to him right before the show, and he was very eager to hear back from you. So that's the retirement is really about cutting back on how much he's corresponding to people. And he's been saying it for several years, so I don't really know if he's going to do it.
I'm going to put two questions in one here just because I'm tight on time. That is that it's so cryptic, and it's also filled with mistakes, grammatical errors, spelling errors, etc. Is that always what he's been like, or is he slipping? And then, always. More importantly, always. Why does he not? He's always been like, okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
Why did he say, don't ask me about the crimes? It's it's all said. Does he literally not want to go over those crimes again because he's bored of it, or is he ashamed?
No, I think he thinks it's already been out there. There's plenty on it out there. He'd rather have you ask him things that haven't been asked before. He'd rather talk about things that he hasn't talked about. And I think that's really all it is he's done plenty of talking. He doesn't see the need to do it again.
And yet the number one question is, how does your mind tick if you can do things like you've done? Why is it that you had a proclivity to do it and the rest of us, we don't? I don't know if I'm going to get any further than you do, Catherine, but I'm going to give it my darndest. I'll write him back. Thank you for this. I appreciate your translating and also your insight. I'll ask you back for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Reminder to all of you, Dr. Ramsland's latest book is The Serial Killer's Apprentice, the true story of how Houston's deadliest murderer turned a kid into a killing machine. It's available for pre-order right now. And coming up next, The Delphi murder suspect again made a surprising entrance in an Indiana courtroom. But which version of Richard Allen showed up? Heavyset and healthier, or pale, thin, and sickly? Believe it or not, how he looks matters for his defense. And I've got a first-hand report next. Also, he's facing a new list of charges. How does that bode, given his trial date is just 56 days away? All of that next. There's only one instance where yo-yo dieting can be good for you, and that is if it can save you from a death sentence. And I actually do mean death sentence, like the kind that the judge hands down. Which is why Richard Allen's appearance in court today was so important. Allen is the only suspect charged in the deaths of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, ages 13 and 14, murdered in Delphi, Indiana, back in 2017. And when we first laid eyes on Richard Allen back in October of 2022, he had a hefty build, gray goatee. That's him there at that time, but it is hard to believe that that guy is the same guy. Richard Allen, a few months later, skinnier, pale, looks pretty sick, actually. He claims that the conditions in his lockup were so poor, the treatment so brutal, that he literally was wasting away. His attorneys once compared his treatment to that of a prisoner of war. But is this visible deterioration a tactic to explain away the so-called confessions that he allegedly made while he was locked up? Delirium caused by rapid weight loss and mystery illness. Again, here's one of the more recent public images of Richard Allen, thin as a rail, kind of sickly. But today he appeared in court again for a pretrial hearing. And though the cameras were not allowed and we did not get a perp walk like this, we had eyes and ears there to see what condition he was in, which is why I now bring in Bob Motta, a Chicago attorney who hosts the Defense Diaries. It's a podcast. He's also got a YouTube channel. He was inside that courtroom all day. So, Bob Motta, which version of Richard Allen did we get today?
Hey, Ashleigh, we got the kind of evening out. He's no longer the sickly character, and he's no longer the portly guy. He actually looked kind of healthy, to be honest with you. In terms of, I've been at every hearing, his eye contact with like his wife was much different. I think that he's kind of like, if you can hit your stride in prison, I think he's hit his stride.
So let me ask you, because you're not only good at reporting, you're an attorney. So you know
Sure.
the tactics that can be used. I was thinking he was losing weight, that perhaps his attorney said, try not to look like the guy in the video on the down the hill. He's big and portly and round, just like you. Skinny down so that in front of a jury, you don't look like that guy at all. And then I thought more about the confessions. There's multiple confessions, according to the police, that he made on the phone while in jail to his wife. Do you think it's a tactic to say he was delirious? He was losing all this weight because he was sick and delirious. He was making stuff up to his wife.
I think that the more likely scenario, at least with the state's mindset, is that they found it awfully convenient that right after he made the confessions, that all of a sudden is when the defense filed its motion saying, hey, you're treating him like a prisoner of war, kind of trying to build in that maybe kind of defense as to the confessions themselves. So I think that was the play. I think whatever was going on with him in terms of his physical well-being was probably legitimate, because it's a shock to the system when you're in segregation 23 hours a day. So, but in terms of whether or not that was a strategy by the defense, that's another question, which is possible for sure.
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating. And if it is, we're playing checkers and they're playing chess. Real quickly, I noticed today that they changed the charging. They took away 2 counts of kidnapping, which I thought, holy cow, if he's the guy who at gunpoint said down the hill, that's kidnapping. But if he didn't do that, then why would you think he's the killer? But then I saw that there's an amended murder charge to say murder while committing or attempting to commit kidnapping. So is it all just a wash?
Yes, it's exactly that. They didn't need the other 2 charges were superfluous because they added like straight up murder with a kidnapping or other type of serious crime. So they didn't need the 2 extra charges. Didn't really change anything. We're at the exact same place.
Which is why I call you and why everybody who's watching right now should look at your podcast and listen to Defense Diaries, because you're very smart at this stuff. Thank you. Will you come back again?
Thanks. Of course. Always.
All right. Bob Mata, always appreciate it. We'll see you again soon. Coming up next, his wife says that he lined up their 3 little boys and shot them dead and then confessed to the police. Look at those faces. Look at them. He's even seen on this police body cam right afterwards, sitting there. But a jury is never going to hear that confession. And the police sadly only have themselves to blame. Why is that? And more importantly, is it even going to matter for this guy? Stories next.
Arms or legs, shortness of breath, chest pain, and rapid breathing or heart rate, or if you are nursing, pregnant, or plan to be.
I'm making my own way forward.
Talk to your doctor about reducing your risk.
Clayton Dorman and his 2 little brothers, all 3 of these kids, those brothers are Hunter and Chase. They should be gearing up for baseball and t-ball season right now. They will not be, because their father is gearing up for a murder trial, his murder trial, times 3 little boys. And the prosecution's job just got a lot harder because of a rookie mistake that was made by the police. This horror story began last June in Claremont County, Ohio. Police say that Chad Dorman lined up his 3 little boys, ages 3, 4, and 7, and then shot them all execution style after planning it for months. His arrest was caught in a harrowing body cam. He surrenders to the police right there next to the murder weapon and the kids' bodies all around. Take a look.
Stand up! Stand the up!
Go ahead and fly whenever any units can advise.
Get your hands out of here. What are you doing, man?
Hey, are you copying all this?
Can I roll over? I ain't gonna hurt you. I ain't gonna hurt nobody.
You got anything on you?
No, I ain't got nothing, man. Phone, that's it. I ain't mad. I ain't nothing. Just make sure that dog don't come out. I don't think he'll bite you.
Could you hear that? Behind what he's saying, I ain't going to hurt you, baloney, you can hear the wrenching cries of the mother of those 3 little boys. She's inside, screaming. He shot them all. Police interrogated this man, Chad Dorman, as is expected, and he confessed. He just spilled it all out. He confessed to killing all 3 kids. But now a judge has thrown that confession out. Because unfortunately, the police did not tell him word for word perfectly that he had the right to an attorney, also known as your Miranda rights. And then they say the police ignored his subsequent requests for a lawyer and just kept on questioning him. I'm joined now by Jesse Weber. He's a lawyer, he's a NewsNation contributor, he's a friend of the show. He's also very smart when it comes to this stuff. If I had a dime, Jesse, for the number of times that Miranda got screwed up and a confession got thrown out, I'd be on a yacht somewhere. But there is still, just get me off the ledge and tell me that there's still a way this confession could get in front of a juror.
So there is a few things that we should talk about here. Number one, this is only with respect to what he said in that interrogation room, right? There were statements that he made to a nurse in his jail cell. There were statements that he made to a social worker in his jail cell. The body cam footage, that can still all come in. But talking about the statements in the actual interrogation room that the judge said is suppressed, if Chad Dorman were to take the stand, for instance, or let's say his attorneys bring up a point during trial that directly conflicts with what he said in that interrogation room, those statements could come in, not for the purposes of saying that he killed his kids, but for purposes of saying he's lying. It's used as impeachment. So a jury could say, wait a minute. If you were to take the stand and say, look, I never said anything to law enforcement, well, those statements might be able to come in. And although a jury's not supposed to consider it for the idea that I murdered my kids, it's going to be very hard for them to get past that if they hear him say on tape, I did it, And I think that's going to be really important, that there is a way this could come in if the defense should open the door during trial.
Well, it's called opening the door, and it does happen a lot. And then, thank God you said the social worker and the nurse, he also blabbed to them, because Miranda doesn't cover them. They can say anything they want on a stand as to what he said to them. But then I get to this. The mother and the stepdaughter were also victims in this crime. They were traumatized. They were held at gunpoint. They tried to wrestle the gun away from him. He executed these kids right in front of them. the police say. Do we even need a confession when we have two witnesses, one whose hand was even shot by this man, allegedly? Do we even need the confession with that kind of witness up on the two of them on the stand?
Well, look, it certainly helps the prosecution's case to have the defendant's own words, you know, his own confession. But given the gravity of this case, when you have a mother whose hand was allegedly shot, when you have this little girl who was running for help, trying to help her brother escape, that testimony, eyewitnesses to the crime, a victim of what happened, that is so strong for a prosecution's case. And by the way, even looking at the body cam footage of him on the porch, they recover the weapon, he's there. I mean, that's pretty strong evidence. You might not even need his own words to convict him.
And I need to just tell the audience that when you saw those black squares in that body cam video around him, those were the dead bodies of his children. And the jurors will not see black squares. They will see the dead bodies of those children lying all around him. Jesse, I'm out of time, but I'm not through with this story. I'm going to ask you back because what the police say he did confess to them, the story that he told them, I'm going to broadcast that, and it is so overwhelming. You look at those little faces. Jesse Weber, thank you for that. Still to come. It took Gypsy Rose Blanchard just 2 weeks to attract almost 20 million followers on social media. And it took her just 81 days to pull the plug completely. When I tell you the reason she did it, I guarantee you would have done the exact same thing. That's next. Gypsy Rose Blanchard came out of prison like very few people do. Into the arms of a public that couldn't get enough of her tragic life and her amazing comeback. As you know, Gypsy spent the better part of a decade locked up for conspiring to murder her incredibly abusive mother. Within her first 2 weeks on parole, and remember that word, parole, she hit almost 20 million followers on social media. She dropped a preview to her memoir, and her docuseries on Lifetime was like, a ratings bonanza. But tonight, Gypsy Rose has 0 followers on social media. In fact, she has 0 social media. She deleted it all last week after posting an apology to, and I quote, all the people that I offended with a lack of accountability. So why the 180 away from the public eye? She says she wants to be more private, but People magazine reports that the decision came on the advice from her parole officer. Apparently, it's all about accountability. And that parole officer could send her back to prison at any time and is apparently a big fan of accountability. So you might read between the lines. Maybe she did it to make sure the parole officer isn't angry. That's it for us. But Cuomo's next, so stick around and I'll see you here tomorrow.
Hey, everybody.